It was one of those summer afternoons when the sun felt like it was baking the entire neighborhood, and the sound of splashing water from my backyard pool was the only relief I had from the heat. I'd worked hard to make my pool a little oasis. Clean tiles, sparkling water, comfortable seating. It was my peaceful escape. But peace doesn't usually last long in a neighborhood run by an overbearing HOA, especially when Karen lives just 3 houses down. She's the self-appointed queen of the community, always finding ways to insert herself into everyone else's business. That afternoon, she showed up uninvited at my front door, wearing a big sun hat and an even bigger attitude, without so much as a hello. She announced that the HOA had decided my pool would be the perfect venue for her granddaughter's birthday party that weekend. She didn't ask. She told me. She even mentioned how lucky I was to be chosen. I stood there, wondering if she truly believed my private property was some kind of public amenity for her personal use. I politely at first explained that I wasn't hosting any parties, especially for people I didn't know. That's when her smile dropped and the tone changed. She brought up community spirit, hinted at HOA rules she claimed gave her authority, and ended with a smug, "I'll let the others know it's settled." That night, I kept thinking about her entitlement. I could already imagine the noise, the mess, and the strangers in my backyard if she went ahead without permission. The more I thought about it, the more I knew I needed to make a move before the weekend. And that's when I came up with an idea that would stop her plans entirely. But I had no clue it would end with Karen calling 911 on me. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She had a reputation that reached every corner of our HOA community. People avoided direct confrontations with her because somehow she always turned the situation around to make herself the victim. She knew every technicality in the HOA handbook and often twisted the rules to suit her own needs. I'd already had a couple of small run-ins with her in the past. Things like her reminding me about lawn height limits or where I could place my trash bins. But this pool situation felt different. This time, she wasn't hinting or suggesting. She was demanding. I decided to ask around quietly, just to see if maybe other neighbors had been roped into similar situations. Sure enough, I found out she'd borrowed a neighbor's gazebo last year for a family reunion without permission, leaving it damaged. Another neighbor had complained she once took over their driveway during a graduation party because she needed the space. It was a pattern, and now it seemed like I was next on her list. The days leading up to the weekend were tense. I noticed her walking by my house more often, peeking into my backyard as if checking to make sure the pool was still ready for her big event. I even caught her talking to a few other HOA board members near the community mailbox, glancing in my direction. It felt like she was rallying support. What bothered me most wasn't just the entitlement. It was the assumption that I wouldn't stand up for myself. She acted like my boundaries didn't matter, like my property was just another shared resource for her to control. I knew if I didn't make a stand now, this wouldn't be the last time she crossed the line. By Thursday night, I had made my decision. I was going to take action before her so-called party could happen. But I didn't realize my plan would set off a chain of events that would have the entire neighborhood talking and the police knocking on my door. Friday morning, I woke up to the sound of voices outside my window. When I peeked through the blinds, I saw Karen in my driveway, speaking animatedly to 2 other neighbors. She was holding a clipboard, flipping through papers, and pointing toward my backyard. One of them nodded. The other looked uneasy. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught bits about community benefit and HOA guidelines. It was clear she was making her case, and she wanted my pool, whether I liked it or not. I decided to call a friend, Mark, who'd lived in the neighborhood longer than I had. He laughed when I told him what was happening, but quickly grew serious. "If she's got the board on her side," he warned, "she'll push this until you either give in or you're painted as the unreasonable one." He told me stories about Past incidents like when she convinced the HOA to fine a resident for having a non-compliant shed, even though it was within code. Apparently, she thrived on control and the attention it brought. By midday, the tension was thick. Every time I went into the backyard, I felt eyes on me from somewhere. Karen's SUV drove by slowly, twice, as if checking for progress. I could almost picture her planning the decorations, inviting her guests, and imagining herself as the generous hostess, all at my expense. Meanwhile, a smaller subplot started to unfold. My next-door neighbor, Lisa, quietly slipped me a note. Under my door, in it, she explained that she'd overheard Karen telling people I had already agreed to host the party. Lisa thought I should know, because she'd seen this tactic before, making something sound official until it's too late to dispute. That was the breaking point for me. I couldn't just wait for Saturday to arrive and let this happen. Needed to do something bold, something that would make it crystal clear my pool was off limits. But in the back of my mind, I wondered how far would Karen go if I pushed back. Saturday morning arrived hotter than ever, and I could feel the weight of the whole situation pressing down on me. The thought of Karen's party crashing my peaceful weekend made my stomach twist. I spent the early hours staring at the pool, trying to think of a way to protect my space without causing a full-blown neighborhood war. But every plan I came up with felt too small or too easy to undo. Around mid-morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Karen's already invited a crowd. She says it's a community event now. People are showing up. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about one stubborn neighbor anymore. It was turning into a full-blown public scene. My backyard, my pool, was about to become a gathering spot for strangers. And the HOA's influence was creeping in fast. Determined to stop it, I grabbed my garden hose and started draining the pool. I figured if the water was gone, the party couldn't happen. It wasn't the most elegant solution, but it was mine. As I worked, I felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. Relief that I was finally taking control. Anxiety about how Karen would react. No more than 15 minutes later, a sharp knock came at the back gate. I looked up to see Karen, her face a mix of shock and fury. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, stepping closer. Her voice was loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. "You can't just ruin a community event like this." Before I could answer, I heard sirens approaching in the distance. My heart pounded. Had someone called the police? Was Karen behind this? I didn't know what was about to unfold, but I sensed that things were about to spiral beyond just a neighborly dispute. The quiet tension that had been building exploded in that moment, leaving me wondering how this would all end and if my simple act of draining the pool would lead to consequences. I hadn't imagined, just as the police car pulled up and officers stepped out, Karen's expression shifted from anger to something almost smug. She waved her phone, and to my shock, she was already on a call, presumably with 911. "You see," she said loudly, "ought to call because this is a disturbance. And you're damaging community property." My jaw dropped. Community property. My pool was on my private property, not a single shared space. Before I could explain, one of the officers approached cautiously, glancing at the drained pool and then back at Karen. I tried to stay calm, but inside, I was scrambling to figure out how to make them understand. Karen didn't waste any time spinning the story, painting me as the bad neighbor who refused to cooperate and was sabotaging what she called a planned community event. But then, something unexpected happened. A third neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, appeared from across the street. He was known for being quiet but observant, and to everyone's surprise, he sided with me. "This pool has always been private," he said. Firmly, there's no HOA rule that lets anyone take over a private backyard without permission. His words seemed to throw Karen off. And even the officers looked a little uncertain. just as I thought things might be turning in my favor. Karen pulled out a document, a handwritten note signed by some HOA board members. She claimed it was an emergency community use approval. But the signatures looked suspiciously messy, almost like they'd been rushed or forged. The tension was at its highest. The officers were caught in the middle, trying to figure out who was telling the truth. Karen's demands were louder than ever, while I felt the walls closing in. Realizing this dispute was bigger than just one pool party. What started as a simple fight over my backyard had escalated into something that could affect the whole neighborhood, and my own peace of mind. The next moments would decide everything. The officers carefully examined the note Karen waved around, flipping it over and scrutinizing the signatures. One of them pulled out their radio, calling in to verify the document with the HOA's official office. While we all waited, the tension thickened like a storm about to break. Karen huffed and crossed her arms, clearly frustrated that her usual tactics might not work this time. Minutes later, the officer returned with a firm look. "This document is invalid," he said. "The HOA confirms they did not approve any community event in this location, nor did they authorize the use of private property without consent." Karen's face flushed red, and her confident posture cracked just a bit. I took a breath, feeling the weight begin to lift. The officers turned their attention to the drained pool and my explanation. I explained that I'd drained the pool to prevent an unauthorized event and protect my property from damage. They nodded, understanding my side of the story. Karen, however, wasn't done. She insisted she was only trying to promote community spirit and that I was being unreasonable. But even a couple of neighbors who had gathered quietly nearby shook their heads. The support I'd felt building all week seemed to solidify in that moment. Just as it seemed the situation was wrapping up, an unexpected twist hit. One of the officers mentioned a noise complaint from a nearby house, but it wasn't about the pool party. Instead, someone had reported loud music and what sounded like a disturbance coming from Karen's own home earlier that morning. Suddenly, the spotlight shifted. The officer suggested maybe Karen's priorities weren't as community-focused. As she claimed, a quiet murmur among the neighbors grew louder. As the police car drove away, I stood there, realizing that sometimes standing up for yourself doesn't just protect your space, it reveals truths people don't want to face. And though the pool was safe for now, the neighborhood would never look at Karen or me the same way again. After the police left, the neighborhood felt different, like a quiet tension had finally been released. Karen retreated to her house, her usual confident stride replaced by something more uncertain. Over the next few days, the HOA board reached out to clarify that no event would be allowed on private property without the owner's consent, making it clear that Karen had overstepped her bounds. I spent the weekend slowly refilling my pool, each gallon of water bringing back a sense of calm and control. Neighbors stopped by, some apologizing for how things had gotten out of hand, others sharing stories of their own run-ins with Karen's demands. It felt good to know I wasn't alone and that standing up for my property wasn't just about me. It was about respecting boundaries that everyone deserved. Lisa, my next-door neighbor, became a friend I could count on. We talked about how important it is to speak up before situations spiral, and how sometimes people in positions of power can take advantage if no one pushes back. It wasn't about conflict for conflict's sake, but about fairness and respect. The experience taught me a lot about community, entitlement, and the power of knowing your rights. It also showed how important it is to stay calm and firm, even when emotions run high. Karen's call to 911 was meant to intimidate me, but it only exposed the truth that my pool, my home, and my peace of mind are mine to protect. In the end, the pool party never happened. My backyard returned to being my sanctuary, free from unwanted guests and drama. And while Karen's reputation might have taken a hit, the neighborhood learned a valuable lesson about respect, boundaries, and standing up for what's right. This story isn't just about a pool or a party. It's about standing your ground when it matters most. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation with an overbearing HOA or a difficult neighbor, remember, your property is your space, and you have every right to protect it.